2, 1. All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Meg. I'm here as part of the Power to Fly virtual hosting team, and I am super excited to get started with today's chat and introduce you to our guest speaker. So as we get going here, I do just want to run by a couple quick housekeeping items for y'all. So if you've joined us for another chat previously, this will be kind of old hat, but just kind of bear with me and we will get through this and onto the main event. Like all of our virtual events, today is all about our community. We want to make sure that y'all are able to participate, really steer the discussion here, and get as much out of today as we put into it. So to that end, you are more than welcome to participate in a number of ways. You don't have to turn on your video. You don't have to have any video capabilities to participate, but we always, I always really enjoy seeing new people and new faces, especially maskless faces safely right now. So please feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like. You don't have to. If you would like to, comment or ask a question or, provide context for a question of yours that we might be addressing, you are more than welcome to do so. You can come off mute to do that. If you do so, try not to interrupt anybody else while they're speaking, especially our guest speaker as well as other attendees. Feel free to interrupt me because I can get very long-winded. If you don't want to come off mute or if you don't have great audio capabilities, not a problem. You can still show up into the live chat or into the Zoom chat. Now keep in mind, if you do come off mute, you are going to show up on the recording as well as the live stream of today's session. So if you have any privacy concerns, your best bet is to comment, ask questions, or provide context via the Zoom chat. And if you are in like deep black ops cover and don't want anyone to know you're here, not a problem. You can still contribute into the chat box, but instead of sending it to everyone, you're going to click that little drop-down menu and select my name, Meg-Power to Fly, and you can just DM me your questions or comments, and I will make sure they are raised to our speaker. So like I said, this is being recorded. So if, everybody that registered for today's session, whether you join us for 5 minutes, join us for the full 60, or, you're joining from the future because you weren't able to make it to today's session and so you're watching the replay, hi. Everybody that's registered for today's session is going to get an email in about 1 to 2 business days, and that email is going to contain a link where you can go to our website to rewatch this recording. Now, if you hear something great from Priya today and you just cannot wait to share it with a friend or a colleague or family member, not a problem. That is so great, and we love to have you share. So you can always head over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly on YouTube. This video will be available there, I think, almost immediately after today's session. So you can feel free to check out all of our other videos there as well. And then, like I said, it's free to send out and around. It's always free to watch our videos, whether on YouTube or on our website. Now, if you are checking us out on YouTube, I also highly recommend that you follow us on our various social platforms. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So it's a great way to stay connected with us, know about what upcoming events are happening, especially, talks like today. We have our mega summit happening next week, our Diversity Reboot 2021. We've got virtual job fairs like at the end of next week on Friday. So please, please, please check out our various social channels. You're also more than welcome to take screenshots or video and share them on social. Just make sure you tag us at Power to Fly, or you can use hashtag Power to Fly, so that way we can share the wealth and share the love and let everybody know that you are learning with Power to Fly this afternoon. So as we get started, I just would like to introduce our speaker for today. Let me switch your slide there. So Priya is an entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker, and a mother to 2 boys, Ronan and Kieran. She holds an MBA from the University of Arizona and worked as a product and brand manager at corporations such as IBM and Nestle. In 2012, she left her career to be home with her 2 boys and never looked back. After successfully launching and running a marketing consulting firm called Roki, or Rokai, I apologize, she began looking for ways to continue fostering creativity and entrepreneurship among women. She launched Flexible LLC in 2016. So welcome, Priya.
Thanks so much, Meg. And it is Roki, no worries. It stands for my 2 boys' names, Ronan and Kieran. So you got it.
That's so cute. I love that.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, again, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have Emily Kane, my associate and my COO on the phone as well, which is really, really great. And I'm just glad to be connected with everyone. Thanks for attending.
Awesome. All right. So one last thing before we jump into the questions, I do just want to call out, we've got 2 slides here. If you want to take screenshots, feel free, but you don't have to. Some of our more type A joiners appreciate it. These next 2 slides are going to be the questions that we're going to try and ask. So these were what were pre-submitted by all of our registrants before today's session. We, kind of took out redundant questions and combined everything to kind of make it into a conversational format. So I'm going to jump to the next slide here. If you do take screenshots of this, then you'll have kind of a blueprint of what we're likely to cover in today's session. That being said, we might not have time to get to everything, and you are all very much encouraged to participate and direct the conversation as we have it today. So if you have a question that would fit in nicely with one of these, you can wait and hold back if you like, but I highly, highly encourage you to come off mute and ask your questions, put them into the Zoom chat, just to make sure that we get the answers out to what you want to know. You took the time out of your day to spend with us, so we want to make sure that you get prime treatment and you get your the questions and answers that you came to this session for. So to get us started, we have a rather interesting slide from Priya. Priya, what can you tell us about this?
I think the title says it all, right? The guilt is palpable. So this actually is a picture. I'm not sure if some of you may have seen it. It actually went viral a couple of weeks ago. This is a picture that my then 6-year-old drew for me. And the way that this all went down was I was working, it was like 7 or 8 o'clock at night one night. And my then 6-year-old walks in and he just asks, he's like, "Mommy, are you done yet?" And I didn't even look at him. I'm like, "No." And he just was like, "All right." And he left. And he comes back 10 minutes later with this picture in his hands. And I was like, oh my God. It was such a punch to the gut. It was like, "Thanks, buddy." Because that says, "Mommy, are you done?" And then there's this woman sitting there just being like, "No." And oh, that's so funny. That's right, Meg. If it's not on social media, did it even happen? So true. It's really funny because I at first saw it and I was like, great. And I took a picture and I sent it to my team, and Emily can tell you too. I put it on our Slack channel and I was like, "Guess what Karen gave me?" And one of our associates, our product manager, Natalie, was like, "You should write a blog post about it." And I'm like, "I guess." So I wrote a blog post about the guilt. The guilt sucks. Just the fact that you feel like you cannot do anything at 100%. You can't work as well as you used to. You can't parent as well as you used to. You can't take care of yourself as well as you used to. You can't even social media all that great. Just everything just feels like it's taken a toll. And so when I posted the blog, I posted it to LinkedIn actually. And, for about a week or so, it just, was sitting out there. And Working Mother magazine got in touch with me and asked if they can syndicate the blog post. And I said, sure. So they syndicated it, and then it just blew up from there. So we got connections to, Good Morning America and, Scary Mommy and all these other places. And I think the underlying theme, which I'm really just, again, grateful and proud of, but it's also so validating, was that this was so universal in the way that people felt, and what they got out of it was, "Oh my gosh, I got a similar picture or a similar note, or I feel the same way every day," or "Why is this so hard?" And so I think that's the theme of my life. And I think a lot of working parents' lives now is, why is this so hard? Why does this have to be so hard? It doesn't. And I don't want to go too far on my soapbox, but I've got lots of thoughts about why is this hard and how can it not be as hard as it is right now.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into some of the questions here. And just as an FYI, again, I will be holding space a couple times, more than a couple times during today's session, to give you all room to participate and room to jump in. So please feel free to do so. To get us started, this person had asked, how do you deal with the guilt of not being there for your children when you are focusing on your career?
It's so hard. Oh my God. And I was going to say, Emily should definitely jump into. Emily's got 3 kids. She's got twins, and it's twin 8-year-olds and a 6-year-old. And I think everybody on this call can corroborate with this question, right? How do you deal with not being there for your kids? I think it's a resounding, I don't know. I mean, I personally try and make as many moments as I possibly can for my kids. I feel fortunate that I have kids that are healthy, that are relatively happy. My kids are doing fairly okay in this environment where we've kind of been ping-ponging back and forth between hybrid and virtual school. But the running theme throughout my professional career was that I wasn't spending enough time with my then 2-year-old, my older son, Ronan. And that's why I left my career. And what really stinks is that was 9 years ago that I left my career. It still felt like there wasn't enough choices available for me as a parent, because I felt this enormous amount of guilt for working 60 hours a week, for traveling, for basically, being the first one to drop my son off at daycare and the last one to pick him up at night, that I didn't have anything in between that and completely leaving my career. And it was devastating. So I ended up leaving my career because the guilt was too much for me to handle. So I hate to say it, like, I don't have a silver bullet answer of how I deal with my guilt. It's more just, I take everything day by day, moment by moment. For example, my son and I, my 10-year-old and I, he's totally getting into Stranger Things now. And I'm like, cool. So over lunch, we legit watched an episode of Stranger Things together. And I was like, oh my God, Barb, we were just totally, yeah, we were, we were geeking out over it together, and it was lovely. One of the other things my older one is getting into, which makes me so happy, is he just struggles with anxiety with the pandemic and with school in general. And so I'm an avid knitter and crocheter, and he started getting into crocheting. And so we crochet together, which is so cute. And that's how I kind of get over that guilt a little bit, is I sit with them and I try to spend these micro moments with them. And I just try to keep the negative self-talk to a limit. And that's pretty much it. And Emily, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that too.
I mean, I think this has been the hardest thing. This has been the hardest thing. I've had a nonlinear path, probably like a lot of people on the call. And I have felt like since I re-entered the workforce after my children were born, I've been 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I only take on opportunities that I know are going to bend and flex to the needs of my kids. But even so, I have several times over found that then I had to reset and renegotiate the boundaries all over again. The commute to work back and forth, just being the person who does the driving of getting my kids to school and back, is not happening for me right now. And I actually think part of how I'm dealing with the guilt right now is my kids are in my house. So I do have 2 8-year-olds and a 6-year-old, and I don't have to say goodbye to them every morning any longer. They just wander down to the basement where we have set up school for them, because we are really, really fortunate and resourced to be able to do that. But I have this little fear inside of me that I am going to go straight back into that guilt of saying goodbye to them every morning and not giving them my fullest attention as soon as we go back to in person. The truth is, how do I deal with that guilt? I've outsourced somebody else's attention for my kids. That's a huge part of it for me.
That's a great way of putting it.
I love that idea of you might not have a ton of time to spend, but trying to make it meaningful or trying to make it, a real connection with your children is so important.
Yeah.
And you're right. It can take a lot of extra kind of pre-planning and a lot of juggling your schedule and really doing that forward thinking of proactive scheduling and how is this going to work out? And if it doesn't, how are we going to rebound? I love Emily's point about, sometimes you just say no to opportunities, and that is horrible. And it sucks that women generally are the ones put in that place.
Yep.
It does really boil down to, as individuals, not just as women, you have to look at what's important to you and what are you trying to get? What is of prime importance? Is it really, being there for your kids, or do you trust that your partner can handle that so that you can be able to focus on something else?
Exactly. And I was going to say too, and I'm sure this will come up in some of the other questions too, but our support systems are dwindling right now. We don't have our nannies or, our friends and sometimes our family, our parents, whoever it was that we may have leaned on in the past to either help with childcare or help with other things. And so we have our spouse, which hopefully everybody on this call has somebody in their life that they can, rely on. But this is where I get on my soapbox where I say, the other support system that you do have that you should absolutely lean on is your organization. And that's where organizations absolutely have to step up. And that's where I get, honestly, it annoys me that women still, including myself, internalize everything and say, I have to fix all this. I have to figure out how to juggle all this. I have to figure out how to, put all these fires out and make dinner and all these balls that are juggling are on fire. It's ridiculous. And it's unsustainable. And it's honestly not even possible. So the more that we can lean on our employer, our boss, our teammates, whoever it is within our organization and say, I cannot do this by myself, the more support people are going to get. So that's where also the guilt in my mind, I keep thinking of how can I offload this and where can I offload this to? Because it just cannot reside with me alone. It's not fair.
Yeah, for sure. So we will go back and cover, kind of that employer or teammate or company culture support network. So we'll cover that in a little bit. The next question that we had that I'm really interested in this one as well. This person wants to know, what can I do to balance motherhood and also a demanding job? I want to do well at both, but feel like it's either one or the other. So we started to talk about this a little bit, but how do you are there key ways to balance that push and pull when both things are very important to you?
So first of all, whoever put this question out, I am sending you a big hug. I know exactly what you're feeling right now, and I have such immense empathy for you. So thank you for even asking this question. When I started this company with my co-founder 5 years ago, the most important thing, the most important tenet and the North Star that we used to guide everything that we did is the fact that there is absolutely no such thing as work-life balance. So first of all, just get that out of your vernacular. That's very important, that we're already setting ourselves up for failure by saying balancing work and parenting or motherhood or parenthood is just such a falsehood. I think it's something that we've been fed that is not sustainable. And instead, the words that I use is life and work fit. So there's life, and then there's all the nonsense in it, including work, right? So when you put motherhood, or you put yourself, or you put your family, or you put whatever you deem as life first, and see that work is just a component of it, I think it helps to rebalance in your mind, like that equation that I think we're all sort of trying to figure out how to, again, balance these things. But again, a lot of it comes back to, being open and communicating with your team and with your company about what it is that you need. Some organizations are so receptive and have wonderful cultures to try and support, working parents or, just individuals in general. That's one of the things that I'm working really, really hard with Inflexible to create a culture that is inclusive and is empathetic and is trying to create an ecosystem for trustworthiness and just inclusion in general. What I would say again is try and think about what is just the most important to you at this moment in your life. It varies. And, for me, at certain times in my life, my career was number one. And at certain times in my life, other priorities were number one. And I adjusted and, certainly, I made some choices that if I had the opportunity to go back, I probably would have made slightly different choices, but follow what is the most important to you right now. I think one of the things that the pandemic has at least taught us is that flexibility and nimbleness is absolutely an integral part of our professional and personal lives now. And so I think as we continue to move through this workforce transformation, you're going to see more and more employers supporting individual employees in different and better ways. So hopefully you'll be able to find that balance in a better way. I hope that's a good enough answer.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right. Like the idea of balance, not only is it a complete myth, but balance as a term never really resonated with me because balance to me implies not stasis, but like that hold your breath feeling of how do I maintain this? It's not a place you relax and let go. It's like, okay, now this is when the odds are the highest.
Yeah.
So, or the stakes, I'm sorry, not the odds. But what you said really resonated with me because like we talked about, I don't have children, but in the last year and a half, actually probably a little bit less, I've had to make a lot of tough calls regarding, my own mental health. And it's put me in the same position of having to say, okay, what's the most important to me right now? And one of the things that really resonated with me, I heard a couple months ago, I don't remember where the quote was from. I want to say it was from Nora Roberts, but it might be someone else. And she basically talked about how the things that you're juggling, like all these things, the demands in your life and where you want to spend your time and whatever, they're all these balls, right? And you have to try and keep them in the air. And some of them are glass and some of them are plastic. So some of the plastic ones can drop. Yes. And it's not great, but you can always pick them up later and it's fine. But then those glass ones cannot be dropped because there's no repairing it. There's no fixing it. There's no picking them back up once they're smashed. And that's really helped me to try and, that way I don't have to feel like I'm necessarily ranking my problems or like the plastic ones aren't important to me. They are important, but some things can kind of weather a little bit of dropping that, situations can't.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of those glass balls, especially something that is, so relevant to us right now is our mental health. And that's across, parenting and work and so many things. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves because we cannot take care of each other unless we do.
Absolutely. There's a really awesome Red Table Talk with Jada Smith where she talks about if you can't take care of yourself, like if the well's empty, you're not providing for anyone else. That's so right. If you really want to be that person that your family relies on and that takes care of everyone, that's great. But you have to make sure that you are taking care of yourself or you're being taken care of because you can't help everybody else when you are nanny.
That's right.
All right. So one of our next questions, this person I thought was kind of hitting some of the things that we've already talked about. They wanted to know, how do you plan for motherhood when you're also planning to make a career move? And I really liked this question because it seemed to me a lot about timing, but also like the value of time, right? You have sometimes you have a shot clock on fertility or when the timing you think is right. And time with your kids that you might already have is very important as well, but so is timing when it comes to your career.
Yep. And that's a really interesting question too, because I thought about that quite a bit personally. I had my first child when I was 30 and I had already, gotten my master's degree and I was in my second job out of grad school. So I was actually at Nestle when I had my first child. And there was certainly, some planning involved, I guess, in terms of, when I wanted to start a family. But the interesting thing was, I didn't plan at that point to make the career move to being a stay-at-home mom. And I would say for anybody who is, thinking about starting a family, thinking about, making some big family choices, also think about, long-term, what you're thinking your career, may look like and leave room for different plans. And I think that's something that I kind of learned sort of the hard way, I guess, was I had a sort of rigid plan in my mind of, this is the path that I want to go down. And I felt sort of pushed into a place of I need to take time away from work. But when you're planning a career move, regardless of, I think, what industry or like where you're moving to, just be open to the possibility that it may not go exactly the way that you think it's going to. The thing that I think the pandemic, again, has taught all of us is change is inevitable, but follow your heart when it comes to family planning. Because I think, again, from a family planning perspective, there is no right time. And I think we've all heard that like, there's no right time. There's no right time to make a career move. There's no right time to make a, family move or a family change. And I agree. Things happen and they happen for a reason. And, I think that's the inevitable part about life is that change is always going to happen. So try and roll with it. Again, I feel like a broken record, but I think a lot of organizations are coming around to the idea of flexibility and nimbleness. And so I think parenthood is going to continue to be a huge part of the American professional ecosystem. So go for it. If family planning is something that's on the horizon for you, good luck. That's so wonderful. And yeah, don't let timing change your decisions about anything in either of those areas.
Absolutely. You know, your family is forever, but jobs may or may not come and go. Emily, what were you going to comment or contribute?
I'm an extremely accommodating person. And that has been a real asset to me throughout my career. Employers love that about me. I really do want to please everybody. One of my biggest anxiety points, poor Priya, because she works with me, is like one of my biggest anxieties is letting people down. One of the things that becoming a parent has shifted in me is it's changed my priorities. And all of a sudden, when other people were involved and I was responsible for them, I got better at saying no. And I have had this long process of realizing that I just needed to give myself permission to set limits and boundaries and to start on the front end of a conversation. And I've had to make a lot of career moves, so that this question is really about career transitions. And let me tell you, I have had so many of them. I was a teacher, then I became a licensed therapist. That took a long time. And then I have moved into first running a nonprofit. And then I've been in operations at companies with like a little bit of software involved. We could call them software companies. My career doesn't make sense to a lot of people. It just makes sense to me, right? So I have definitely been moving. And in the process, I have learned to be so much more thoughtful about the questions I ask as I'm moving into an organization, and so much more deliberate and clear about what my needs are, what my limits are, and what I want to get. I think I used to go into job pursuits sort of like, hi, I'm here to please you, and I want to give you everything you want, and I want to be your perfect candidate, and I want to get an A+ and 5 gold stars. And I know that this is also a function of age and positioning, but at this point, I don't want to work with everybody. I don't want to do everything. And and knowing what I want, why I want it, and how I want it to feel are really, really important parameters I try to walk into conversations with when I'm talking about career moves. I try to pay really careful attention to how the conversation feels. I think part of planning for motherhood or parenthood when you're making career transitions is asking those questions of an organization. How do parents experience being inside the organization? What have they done to support and acknowledge the realities of parents? And what is the level of autonomy you have over making critical decisions about your job and work role? I think we all know that we've been in work settings where we may have a laundry list of tasks, but it becomes immediately apparent, depending on what type of organization you're in, that not all of them are actually crucial to executing on the primary mandates of your job. And being in roles where you have the autonomy to set those priorities and focus on what matters most, not just in your life, but also in your job role, is something that I think becomes increasingly important as you're also trying to fit your work life into your parenting life.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this same vein, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in some of our questions, because I do want to kind of tie this in. This person had asked, how do we explain to our employers that asking for flexibility due to motherhood doesn't mean we'll work less efficiently? So I found this a really interesting question, because pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the way you phrase it may be different, but I love Emily's idea about setting those boundaries. So could you give us a couple examples, or maybe how you have handled this in the past, to kind of address that idea with employers?
Emily, you want to take this, or you want me to answer this?
I just feel like this issue takes so much courage.
Yeah.
I feel like this conversation takes so much courage, and it's easy for me to say this now with my CEO on the call because I know her and I knew what I was walking into with her. And I also know it's easy for me to say this, and some of the people on the call may not have felt ever in their careers empowered to set these limits and set these boundaries, right? And I've certainly been in organizations where it didn't matter what I said or did. I think that parenthood isn't the only transition that puts you through this. So Meg, I'm just also acknowledging like all of the transitions you've been through in your life. There come times when you realize that life is about more than work. And if you're at an organization so this isn't just about motherhood. If you're at an organization that doesn't want you to have a full life, you're probably not at the right place for you or for any other human being for that matter. And some of us have the opportunity to find better places to be. And you have to have a lot of courage to take the risk to give yourself permission to look. And I know that what I'm saying right now, I'm talking from a place of opportunity and resource. I've worked all kinds of jobs. I mean, I sort of described my journey, but I didn't say the part where, like, very early in my career, I worked food service and manual labor. I worked in manufacturing, literally laminating plywood on the manufacturing line. I have been all over the place. So I'm very far now from what maybe my expectations were in life. And I'm emphasizing how much courage it takes, knowing that I could have stayed in one of those situations.
I want to add to that too, because Emily, you said that so eloquently. I think the stigma of women having to do this and have these conversations alone needs to change. I think that's it too, is that, again, working mothers, working women, working parents, just have that burden on their shoulders that somehow they need to walk into their boss's office and they need to sell them on, look, I'm going to be just as productive. I guarantee it. It is not on you. And in fact, if a boss, to Emily's beautiful point, thinks it is, then you're at the wrong place. Because like, it is absolutely not your responsibility to go in and say, I'm going to work 40% less, but I'm going to be 25% more, productive or whatever it may be. There is so much evidence that shows that we're even working a 4-day week, right? Like having Fridays off are just as efficient, if not more. We've seen it multiple times in organizational behavior case studies and graduate school. I mean, people have said this multiple times, that working less hours a day makes you more efficient. So we already know this. It's already proven. On top of it, there are 1,000 TED Talks that talk about how women moms make the best entrepreneurs and make the best, like, whatever, because you just know how to be efficient with your time. And so again, if you feel as though you're in a place where you have to sell this to the person you're working with, I think, unfortunately, that's just a culture that is not open and ready to have flexibility in it. And I don't know what the right move is at that point, but what I do know is those types of companies are the ones that are losing out. There were 140,000 women who left the workforce, 140,000 jobs that were cut in December. Sorry, I said that wrong. And all of them were women. Over 1 million women left the workforce last year. And this is exactly why. It's because they worked in organizations that probably didn't understand that by providing some flexibility, they could have allowed for those women to stay in the workplace. Instead, I am one of those people. I left my career because I did not have a middle ground. And the more that organizations can come around to the fact that it is not an individual issue that needs to be solved, nor is it an individual case that needs to be made case by case, the more people can be supported and just stay in the workplace. And again, the person who submitted this, thank you for this question. I feel the weight on your shoulders, and I know there's a lot of other people that are probably feeling that same weight, and my heart is with you.
Oh, beyond. Okay, so kind of coming around to maybe the other side of this question, this person had wanted to know, what is the most impactful thing a manager or colleague has ever done for you as a working parent? I feel like this is really important, especially as either coming from, management or whatever, but I like the coworker question because like, I don't have kids, but I want to make sure that I'm being conscientious and helpful to my coworkers that do have children, because I can barely take care of myself most days, and you are managing to keep multiple human beings alive. So how, what is most impactful, especially, like if you can provide an instance from your own history, great. But if not, what would be the most impactful?
Yeah, I'm fortunate that even when I was at Nestle, we had on-site childcare, which was really helpful. It was so wonderful. For example, if somebody went to check on my child and said, "Hey, they're doing great," awesome. But where I've had the most impactful things happen has been with Flexible. I think we have a culture and a team that truly, truly understands what it means to just step in and say, "Hey, you need a hand, I'm here for you," regardless of why. And so I do want to say that this goes beyond just being a working parent. There's been multiple times where team members need to take a mental health day or just a day to do whatever it may be. And every person on this team knows intrinsically when they enter into the company that one of the things that's asked of us is to just be there for each other and to just be there as a fallback. And that's definitely been something that's so hugely impactful for me over the summer last year, right? I didn't work in the mornings. I was like, "Listen, everyone, I love y'all, but I cannot work in the mornings because I have to homeschool my kids." And that was it. Or actually, no, it wasn't last summer. It was last spring. And everything still moved forward exactly the way it did because the team rallied. And I think that's what the moral is the more that we can support one another in the smallest ways, whether it's even just scheduling meetings at specific times of the day so that they don't fall into a time frame where you are not available. That's such an impactful thing, like if you know for a fact that, "Hey, I absolutely cannot get online until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if somebody schedules a meeting at 2, like that's not super respectful." So it's those little things I think that have made the most impact on me. Somebody just said employees who feel valued by their employers, I'm sorry, it just went away, are more loyal. I agree, Nicole. I absolutely agree that, one of the core tenets that I believe is that trust begets trust. That's it. So if you trust each other and you say, "Hey, this is who I am and this is how I need to work," and everybody else trusts that and respects that, then you have a really, really great environment. And again, it goes beyond working parents. It goes to how we all are unique individuals. We all have different needs. So that's certainly helped me as a leader, as a person, as a mother, as a woman, to see that there are people that I work with that respect me and are there for me no matter what. And it makes such a huge impact.
Yeah. All right. So kind of following this idea of, what we would expect from, kind of employers in an ideal sense. This person had wanted to know, how do we identify companies with good childcare policies? What questions can we ask during interviews that will help us reveal their position towards it?
That's a great question. I wish I was like a full-on HR person, because I bet an HR person would have like really, really great responses.
I'll take this
like,
one.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I've held that role because I keep being in startups where
Perfect.
I do many things. The last new employee that I onboarded into a startup told me that when she read the employee handbook and got to our leave and childcare policies, she cried. She was a mom of 2. This was a company that was co-founded by another mother, and a lot of the policies had been written by this co-founder. They were things like we absolutely, and this was in the handbook, we absolutely welcome your child into the office. I think somewhere in the process of onboarding new employees, as we were building out that company, I even started to bake in, and I wasn't with Flexible at the time, but they existed. So everyone was like, "Did you look at Flexible?" I started to bake in childcare locations that I had vetted with the community that were, and this is at a tiny company. There are like 10 of us, right? But I was handing off lists of childcare options that we knew were solid within 3 or 4 blocks of our organization. And this is a technology company, so I think that was particularly unusual in a data analytics software company for something like that to be happening in such an engineering heavy environment. The other thing I would say is it's really, really important if you can find anyone internally in that organization who's also a parent.
Yeah.
Those are your allies, and those are the people that you want to talk to, and you want to have real talk about what their experience has been like. I was just talking with a friend who's over at another really well-funded organization here in Pittsburgh, and he is expecting his third baby. And he said throughout the shutdown in March, he has two little ones. His partner is a physician. She cannot work from home.
Yeah.
She goes into the hospital, and she works with cancer patients. So he's an engineer and a physics guy, and he's handling all kinds of complicated technical stuff. But he said at this organization, for the first 4 months of the shutdown, like, he heard no drama, no feedback about all the times of day he wasn't actually available because his 4-year-old and his 2-year-old didn't have childcare. So
Yeah.
he's doing his engineering work, he's running preschool, he's running daycare, and that is what it is. I suspect a lot of people know a lot more about what their companies really, really mean about their orientation to be supportive towards working parents after 2020.
I would add too, for folks who are going into larger companies, ask if there's an ERG, like a employee resource group, right? Because if there's an employee resource group that's specifically for parents, ask for it. Ask if you can be connected with somebody within that ERG too, because just as much as they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. So make sure you ask questions like, is there on-site childcare? Are there subsidies for childcare? Is there an ERG? What's your policy for leave? What's your policy for flexibility, for telecommuting, for time off, for in-service days, right? What's your policy for summer? Things like that, as you go to organizations where people are parents of, school-aged kids, those are some of the things that people don't also think about too, is what the heck do you do in the summertime? Oh, it's really hard. So.
Yeah, I love that point. You're absolutely right. When you are, talking to a new employer or potential employer, you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So sometimes it's not even necessarily at you asking the right questions so much as it is really listening to their answers. If it's not, if you say, well, what kind of support do you have for, the working parents of your organization? And it's crickets, that's right. Important. And if they say, if they give you like a laundry list of like, oh, well, we have this great ERG and we also have, a lot of policies, ask about the policies.
Right.
They're not things like, they're not trade secrets. These are things they should be able to talk to you about because they're things that are very important and very material to how where you decide to work.
That's right.
All right. So we only have about 15 minutes left in today's session. These always go way too fast. So I am going to try and keep getting us to a couple more questions. But please, if you do feel like you have a question that you'd like to ask, even if it's just, a comment on what you've heard already, please feel free to come off mute or put it into the Zoom chat to share. All right, so this person's coming at it from maybe an earlier perspective. They wanted to know, how did your career change after having children? I don't want mine to change after motherhood, but that seems impossible.
Oh boy. Again, your career is, partly in your hands, partly in your, employer's hands, but it's going to change. I mean, I think it's important to just, kind of go into it with the mindset that your entire life will be different. It won't be better, worse, it's going to be different for every single person, but it will be different. You will have a human that you are now responsible for, that's taking up time after work, before work, sometimes during work. So of course, things are going to change. So I think it's important to just note that it is not going to be the same. And I think what's really just, again, annoying on my end is, sometimes, especially in the past, employers would just believe that you would go home, you'd have a baby, you'd stay home for 12 weeks, come back, and you're exactly the same person doing exactly the same job. And that is not true. And so I think what the important thing to do is, again, kind of like what we were just talking about, have those, frank conversations with your employer, with your HR folks, with, your teammates, whoever it may be, on how things changed for them, especially, the working parents on your team. Like, what should I prepare for? I think one of the things that's really great about remote work is that you can work and have your baby sitting next to you, which is wonderful. So that you can still do all the things that you need to take care of your child. One of the hardest things for me was, I had just gotten breastfeeding down with my older son when he was like 11 weeks old, sorry. And I went back to work at 12 weeks. And at 13 weeks, I was asked to travel. And it sucked because they were just like, all right, you're back. Go back to everything you were doing before. I was like, wait, what? And I couldn't bring him. And I was gone for a week and I had to go across the country to Los Angeles. And my milk supply dropped. I ended up getting like a lower end of mastitis. And I pumped all this milk and tried to transport it back and it blew up and exploded on the plane. It was like the most horrific, horrifying thing that could possibly happen. But that was, again, because the assumption was that I could just jump in and do all the same things. And this goes back to the beginning of this conversation. The guilt that I felt because I wasn't the same person was palpable. But my God, if my organization, oh my God, Milk Stork is the best, right? But if my organization, had taken a little bit of time to say, hey, you don't need to travel for 6 months, or you don't need to travel for the first year, or, even something like that, would have helped so much. So again, I feel like the best advice here is to go in with both eyes wide open, but also please have those conversations with your team members who have children, who are parenting or have parenting responsibilities, and have those conversations beforehand and say, how should I prepare for the changes that are coming? Again, it's going to change. It's just a matter of making sure that you're ready for that.
Absolutely. I mean, like if you were to move house, that would be a large change. You would have to make adjustments. If you were to, have like a parent move in with you or something, that would be a large change. So this is nothing short of that, because not only in most cases is it a totally new person joining your household, but the physical aftermath and the physical effects on you, your partner, everyone. I mean, never mind like lack of sleep for however long.
Yep.
Those are massive. And granted, we're also having this conversation from a very, American-centric perspective, because we are abysmal when it comes to,
parental leave and everything. Yep.
So, for some of our international joiners, apologies for the litany of things that we're not doing well. Thank you for everything that, the great example you're setting that hopefully we can start adopting. But yeah, it really, even if your employer had said, hey, if you would like to, and if you feel able to, could you start traveling for us in a month? If it's an ask as opposed to, nope, you're doing this,
right.
That way you're at least giving the, giving the person the opportunity to say, yes, I'm able, or no, I'm not. You don't want to undercut people, but it's, you need to recognize that like, it shouldn't be a complete derailment of someone's career, but you also just can't pretend it never happened.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So to round us out, I know we've talked a lot about guilt here today, but this person's kind of angle was a little bit interesting to me. This person wanted to know how to work on personal guilt, like especially when your managers are very understanding and saying it's not about productivity right now. How are you supposed to handle it when you're still feeling bad or guilty about not being at your pre-pandemic productivity levels?
Yeah, I know that's a really hard one. And it's so easy to say, don't feel guilty, because, it's extremely easy to say that. But I think we're all feeling it. I think we're all feeling like, man, it's a trap. It really is a trap to just, feel like, if only I could get back to the level of productivity that I had before. But I think it's also really, really important to recognize that we have been put through the ringer this year, right? So this is a personal story of mine too, where early last year, right when the pandemic hit, my co-founder left the company and we essentially had to completely pivot our business. Like we had to totally shut down the way that we operated and just like basically restart. But I felt like I had all this energy and I was like, it was this nervous kind of excited, like, oh my God, we're in this like unknown territory. Let's figure this out. And this sort of like entrepreneur in me like kicked off and I was like, let's do it. But 8-9 months in, I mean, I was pretty much on the edge of burnout. I just was like, why am I not as productive as I was 6, 7, 8 months ago? So I think what's important is to just try, I know this is really hard to do, but try to give yourself that grace that we're all in this place of massive, just, I don't want to say burnout, because not everyone's in that place of burnout, but we have so much weight that we're all bearing. So of course you may not be as productive as you were before. And that's probably the only way that you can work on that guilt, is to just continue to have that grace for yourself, that like, this is super hard, and every other person on the planet is probably feeling it in one way or the other. That's the one really nice thing about the pandemic, is the universality of it. It has kind of bound our humanity together in a very unique and very interesting way that we all can look back. Like, I remember in April of last year, my husband and I were like just cooking, and we looked at each other and we were like, do you realize that every single person on the planet is at home right now? Like, it was just such a weird feeling to be like, every single person is in their like dwelling, or in some dwelling right now, like whether they're home or, somewhere. And it just was such an interesting thought that the entire world was quiet. And it was just such an eerie, like, we all have that connection going on right now, and we felt that connection. So again, if you can hold on to that idea of universality, that everybody has been bearing this for so long, hopefully it can assuage that guilt a little bit. But aside from that, if you're able to get access to therapy, I would highly recommend it. Any sort of telehealth that helps with mental health at this point, I think, is also super helpful when it comes to things like dealing with anxiety or guilt or depression. I think it's so important right now.
Yes, completely, could not agree more. I think it's also, like you said, it's that universality of, everyone is going through this is huge. And it's also really, that's the one thing I've really liked about this, is that you see not just certain people working from home, but everybody. So it really, instead of being less professional, people just have to be a lot more real and a lot more honest about, here's what I'm dealing with. And so it does really highlight the fact that, for some people like myself, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic wasn't really that different. And apparently I'm living like a shut-in, but I was okay with it.
Yeah.
But not everybody was like that. And so, like, seeing a lot of people make that shift into, well, I'm sorry, my family's here. Well, it's your house. Where else are they going to be right now? Like, we don't all have, and like, I love how Emily put it about, because I feel like the term privilege turns a lot of people off, like they stop listening. But that idea of like being resourced and having these things at your disposal that not everyone has. So you do get that universality, but you also get that deeper understanding of, it's all relative. This is the stressors that I'm working with. And just because somebody else maybe has more of them, or more intense ones, or just different ones, doesn't make either of us any better or any worse. But, you have to recognize that everybody's going through this, and everybody's going through it differently.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. It's very, well, I used to think that the only person you should really be comparing yourself to was you. But even that's kind of like not really helpful, right?
No, exactly.
You can't compare yourself to anybody, because yesterday you is not the same person you are today, and it's not the same person you're going to be tomorrow. Maybe they'll be drastically different, maybe they'll be a little bit different. But if that's what you're constantly doing, is comparing, you're compare and despair. It's never going to be like you think it's going to be. You don't compare yourself to somebody else and go, yes, I am crushing it. You're like, well, why can't I measure up to what this person's doing?
That's right. Exactly. I agree.
All right, so we have 4 minutes left in today's session. I do just want to say huge thank you to both Emily and Priya for being so open with us and taking time out of your day to spend with us. Before we sign off for the day, is there anything, I'll kind of pose this to both of you, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with, or anything that we haven't talked about yet today that you really did want to touch on?
I don't think so. I think, again, the soapbox that I'm just continuously on is, please don't keep this internal, right? Don't internally struggle with the weight that the pandemic and the burden that it's put on our shoulders. Try and open up as much as you can with the folks that may not necessarily be in your traditional support network. But I think that's what's going to help us all kind of ride through this, is being more open and vocal about how difficult this is. And I think that's what's going to be the most important thing for us all right now.
I feel like I want to say something about modeling. It goes back to the most important thing a manager's ever done for me as a working parent. The most important thing had been modeling that productivity ebbs and flows, modeling taking care of herself. And I could be talking about Priya right now, but I'm actually not. I'm talking about another manager before her, who would say out loud, I'm going to my OBGYN appointment now across the whole company. And it took a long while for me to settle into the modeling and the example that she was setting. So along with that, I think my last piece is be gentle. We need to be gentle right now. We need to be gentle with ourselves. We need to be gentle with each other. And if you're a manager, the most powerful thing you can do is model being gentle with yourself and being gentle with your team. But I think that's something that a lot of us have an easier time applying to others than ourselves. So that was my last piece of soapbox.
Not at all soapbox. No, I think it's definitely one of those things that you say it out loud and it seems like, well, everybody knows that. But like, these are the things that we need to be reminded of, right? They're the things that you find it very, like you said, you find very easy to apply to other people or to treat other people, with that kindness. But when it comes to yourself, I mean, I do this all the time. Like I talk to and treat myself in a way that I would never do to a friend. I would never allow anybody to do to anybody else in my presence. And it's just, the ridiculous standards to which I hold myself, that's what I'm constantly looking at. So you're right. If we can kind of remember that, like you said, the productivity kind of ebbs and flows. How can we model that for other people? Being upfront about here's where I am today. Here's how everything's going. Because you're right. Like we're in a pandemic. Like that phrase alone like hits me every so often where I just look, like I'll be watching TV and nothing seems that different. And then I'm just like, oh God, yeah, everything's on fire right now. Like,
that's right.
Just remember, very, very few living people have ever done this before, ever. Right. So you do your best. You hope for the best, and that's all anybody can expect from you. And sometimes your best is here and sometimes it's there, but you know what? That's what it is. Right. I love it. All right, so I do want to call out a couple things I was able to put into the chat while we were speaking. So there is a link in there in case you are interested in some of our past chats about parenting while working or how to navigate that working parents landscape. We have a ton of chats. I put a link in there that's like a list that'll pre-pop up with some of our parenting panels. So definitely take a look at those if you're curious. There's also going to be, I know that there's more panels coming up this year. There's also some stuff happening at our Diversity Reboot 2020 Summit that's happening next week. So please, please, please feel free to check some of those past panels out, as well as, take a look at what our upcoming chats are going to be. We'd love to have you with us. And if, like Priya and Emily, you are working on a working parent schedule, like I said, you can always register for a chat. And if you can't make it, no worries. There's no hard feelings. There's no problems. But you will be, you'll get that that reminder in your inbox of, hey, this chat's ready to watch. If you are trying to get the same idea but not clutter up your inbox, again, just follow our channel, our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly. It is a great way to stay updated and catch those chats without, adding to the number of emails you have to check per day. Again, I just want to say a huge thank you to Priya and Emily. This has been wonderful, and I really appreciate how how open and how transparent you both have been. This can be a really personal topic for a lot of people. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Anytime. I can't wait to speak with you both again. And then a huge thank you to our attendees. Really, really love all the questions that we got beforehand. It was amazing and really helped to shape the conversation that we were able to have today. And thank you so much to the people that participated and commented in the Zoom chat. It was really great and really, it's one of my favorite things to do is host these events. So it really adds to the experience. So yeah, Thanks so much for spending your afternoon with Power to Fly, and hopefully you'll have a lovely Thursday and a great weekend ahead. And I hope to see you all on around on many more chats in the future. Thanks, everybody.